Sidelines with Rob Browne. Talk sporty to me.
All right, Rob Browne here with you on this cold Thursday morning. It is, I'm over here at the farm in Parkin, at the cherry farm. I think it's 32 degrees. Just went outside. Everything is frosted up. Better get your defrosters going. Of course, then it's going to be 78 degrees in the next few days. That's just the way it is around here. Just hope it's nice enough for the ducks to be here. Got about 4.5 inches of rain here over the weekend. So looking more duck-like. And I'm wearing my Delta waterfowl hat. I'm proud to be a member of that great organization. They produce ducks so we can kill ducks. They're a great organization based out of Bismarck, North Dakota. We have the largest chapter in America here in Memphis, the Memphis chapter of Delta Waterfowl, thanks to the hard work of a lot of great people like Jerry Wagerman, John Dobbs Jr., Will Yandel. There are so many people you can't even begin to count. It is a populist, we the people movement. I love it. Hey, Jacques Doucet, WAFB Channel 9 down in Baton Rouge, is on with us in the first segment. You know, there's a game this weekend down in Tuscaloosa. It's a big one. It always is when these two get together, and that is Saturday. It's the 3:30 Eastern CBS game of the week. I think we only have 5 or 6 of those games left before Brad Nessler and Gary Danielson have to cover such exciting Big Ten matchups as Rutgers and Minnesota and whatever else. But I don't know where they're going. We're going to miss them. I can tell you that. It'll be different without them. But hey, Sidelines here, 25 shows at least a month, over 300 shows a year. Repetition is the mother of all skill. That's what we try to do, get the best guests on here. We'll also have Vince Ferrara from the Sports Animal up in Knoxville on with us right after Jacques Doucet. Hour number 2, Rocky Top Tennessee Tailgate Report with Mark Hamm. Going to be joining Coach Matt Dean from over in Memphis at Rhodes and ULMAD John Hartwell. Okay, you know how to do it. All the following us on Twitter at sidelines_live, all that good stuff. Subscribe to our YouTube channel. But let's get started with Jacques Doucet. And Jacques, man, look at this. It's coming up here November 4th. Just snapped our finger, and it's already here. And LSU is that team like Auburn was in 2017 with 2 losses that, you know, at the end of the year was number 2 in the CFP rankings. LSU's got some mileage to make up, but let's talk about the matchups and how you see them playing out on game day.
Well, Rob, it's always as you said, a huge game, an emotional game from LSU's perspective with the Nick Saban dynamic, of course, being the LSU head coach for 5 years in the early 2000s and now being Alabama's coach since 2007. I don't know if the animosity has died off. I get different answers on that. Is he now just really Alabama's coach and not the coach that used to be at LSU? You talk to a lot of former players at LSU about Nick Saban and hear the great stories. But when it comes down to the game, I think it's been a big game for who wins and who doesn't win the Heisman Trophy. Leonard Fournette got knocked off course in 2015. Joe Burrow solidified his Heisman Trophy in 2019. And now Jaden Daniels is looking to at least be a finalist and perhaps win the Heisman Trophy himself. And as you said, CBS, national stage, primetime stage, going back to the future one last time. LSU and Bama in primetime there. Bama is a slight favorite, a 3-point favorite. LSU is down a lot of defensive personnel. But Tigers hoping that they have the mental toughness to go over there and win against an Alabama team that is still very good and finding ways to win, but has not been the invincible army that they've been in years past. But looking forward to going down to Tuscaloosa on Friday.
Oh, yeah, it always is a great environment. Pete Jenkins, 83 years old. I mean, hey, age is just a number. The guy's regarded as one of the best defensive line coaches ever. How much of a difference is it, a discernible difference that you can notice with the defensive line? I mean, LSU had that shootout 55-49 September 30th in Oxford, but they look like the defense is playing better, not necessarily shutting people down, though.
Yeah, Rob, I think this is going to be the benchmark, or this will show how much they've improved. I mean, early in the Missouri game for LSU, they were losing 22-7, and it looked like the season might just go off the rails. That was the week after giving up 55 in the loss to Ole Miss. But they've kind of, gotten their feet under them to win that game, and then they've played Auburn and then Army. How good is Army and Auburn offensively? I'm not sure, but you're shaking your head. You know Auburn.
Yeah, it's been rough.
So
they're getting better.
Alabama has not had a tremendous offense. I think they're kind of like a baseball player who bats 250 but is capable of hitting the home run. I mean, when you fall asleep, that's when Jalen Milroe throws the deep bomb and hits you with that. They've given up 35 sacks, I believe. But, to your Pete Jenkins question, I think he's improved them. But I think LSU only has 14 sacks as a team all year long. So this would be a nice, obviously, a great spot for LSU to put some pressure on the passer. And I think it's key for LSU to force a turnover or two, because defensively, you just still wonder how good they're going to be, especially, they've missed Rob in the transfer portal. Denver Harris has been a knucklehead. Deuce Chestnut's been a knucklehead, apparently. And Zy Alexander, who was playing well from Southeastern, has an injury. So all those guys are out. And Mekhi Wingo, an outstanding defensive lineman, had a surgery. He's out. So this is a case of the reinforcements and a big opportunity for them to emerge.
Well, you think about LSU, some of the running backs they brought in, some 5-stars in the last couple of years. Where are they going to play a role Saturday?
Well, I think Logan Diggs, who played for Rummel High School in New Orleans and then played several years at Notre Dame and then transferred to LSU. This is his first year. He's kind of become the bell cow in terms of running the football. I don't know if he's got that second gear. He's broken off the 35-yard runs. I don't know if he's capable of breaking off the 60-yard run. But then you have John Emery, who's been on the team since Christ was a carpenter, right? And last year, he scored a big touchdown in the first half. They threw him a little swing pass, and he weaved his way into the end zone. And then you got other guys still there, like Josh Williams, the veteran who was LSU's leading rusher last year. So I don't know how many running backs are going to play. Certainly they have streamlined that in recent weeks. The talk was in camp they've got 8 scholarship running backs, but now they're not playing nearly that many. So, Alabama defensively gave up the 34 points to Texas early in the year. But the one score that I look at that kind of worries me, if you're an LSU fan, is that they beat Ole Miss 24-10, and LSU gave up 55 points to Ole Miss. So I know you get in trouble when you compare scores, but that's one at least that sticks out.
Well, you look at scores just like you look at year-over-year comparable numbers. I look at them every day for stocks. I mean, what are your earnings? What did you do? Then what are the circumstances? And that shootout 55-49, sometimes you're just going to get in track meets, okay? So, I mean, I think what you just said is exactly right, though, about football scores. It's kind of like the revenge thing. If revenge meant anything, teams like Vanderbilt would be in the Super Bowl. I mean, every other year, because especially after this year. I mean, I think looking at this matchup, and here's a good question from somebody on the web, obviously watching here on the YouTube. James in Mobile, LSU's the number 1 offense in America. How good is this Bama defense? Well, you had Kevin Steele there that 1 year, 2015 at LSU, had him at Auburn 5 years. This is his 3rd time back with Nick Saban at Alabama. And his son was still there. He's got a brother still on staff at Auburn, in compliance. But one thing about Kevin Steele's defense compared to Pete Golding, that alpha male culture, they're going to get after your ass. He says, don't wait for adversity to come to you. You be their adversity. And I think it's a pretty damn good defense.
Kevin Steele had 1 year at LSU, and I remember when they introduced him, somebody asked him about his days at Alabama, and he was like, I don't talk about that. We don't talk about that school. They're our enemy now. And then sure enough, he's back. He's back with them. That's how this business goes.
Exactly.
But in 2015, LSU's did not have I would say, nowhere close to this offense, but they were rolling along pretty good with Leonard Fournette, and they went over there and couldn't do a thing. And I don't think anything like that's going to happen this time around, but you just have to wonder, Nick Saban, who just celebrated his 72nd birthday, how his juices get flowing with a bye week to prepare and everything to try to come up with a scenario to slow down this LSU offense, which has been which I read today has actually through 8 games gained more yardage than the 2019 LSU team, which is pretty incredible to think about. So Rohan Davey, former LSU quarterback who threw for 528 against Alabama in 2001. I chatted with him the other day, and he said he's looking forward really early on to see the chess match, but then the adjustments and what happens after that.
Yeah, and I like this one here. Smith in Memphis talk about the LSU wide receivers versus Alabama's secondary. And really, Jacques, wouldn't you say that your secondary is only as good as the push that you get from your front seven on a pass rush? But Alabama doesn't really have those All-American guys on the front four. But, man, they've got Kool-Aid and they've got Dallas Turner as an edge rusher. They're pretty damn good.
Yeah, last year, talking to the offensive linemen for LSU, Will Campbell and Emory Jones, who were freshmen,
yeah,
all the talk was about I'm totally going blank here. Your Alabama's high draft pick on the defensive line last year. Help me out, Rob. Who was Alabama's big pass rusher last year?
Ekelor. I'm drawing.
Anyway,
I'm trying to think. I can't even pronounce his name. I know it's the big guy, Elia.
No, the guy that went to the NFL, high draft pick. Anyway, LSU walked away from the game saying Dallas.
You're talking about Will Anderson Jr.
Will Anderson.
Yeah, number 3. And then, of course, Bryce. I thought you said offensive lineman. Okay, sorry. My apologies.
No, my bad. I should have thought. Will Anderson was the big talk going into the game. How are we going to stop him? But then I think Will Campbell and the other guys last year after 2022 said that, Dallas Turner was the better player and the one they had more problem with. So I think that's a big story for LSU moving forward. And so you're telling me that Bama's front seven is not your typical front seven. It's interesting to hear these LSU guys talk about watching the LSU Alabama game over the years and seeing the Hightower and some of these Alabama linebackers over the years. And certainly that 2011 season, the 2 games those 2 teams played, the defensive talent on both sides of the ball was incredible, and the NFL talent. So, I think if you're LSU, I think what you worry about is offensively, you move the ball between the 20s, but then when you get into the red zone, they force you to kick field goals. And like what happened against Tennessee last week or 2 weeks ago, fumbled the ball away, Bama scoop and score. Those are the things that LSU has to avoid. Bryant-Denny Stadium is a great place to watch a game. It's got a great atmosphere. I don't think it's elite loud like the Swamp. Pretty loud in there.
And that's weird when people say that it doesn't get elite loud. But when you win as much as Alabama does, it's sort of like, knowing dinner is going to be served. You've got, Gordon Ramsay in there in the kitchen when you get home every night from work. I mean, I honestly believe you can be spoiled. And Alabama, they claim 18 national championships. I've done the research. They could claim 27, give up 41 and take 77 when Texas Notre Dame beat Texas and leapfrog from 5th to 1. But I just think they've just won so much. The standard is so high. It takes a lot to get them excited. But it takes Auburn or LSU coming to town for sure. They'll be on fire Saturday. I like this one.
It's the same thing at LSU. When the home team feels threatened, if the fans think they need us today in this game, that's when they show up. And I think that's how Alabama fans will view it. That it's a 3-point spread. It's going to be close, or it's viewed to be.
It is going to be. And the thing about LSU that gets me, growing up in Memphis, you're in a melting pot as an Auburn fan from the womb, but listening to LSU with John Ferguson, WWL, and then after that, Jim Hawthorne for, I think, 34 years, something like that. I've listened to a lot of LSU football. I hate the fact that night football is almost like a special treat now for LSU and Auburn, because I think both of them thrive in that night culture. I wish the SEC office would think about that, because tradition never graduates.
Well, and I've read and heard that in the old days, the kickoff used to be at 8 p.m. They moved it up to 7 p.m. because of newspaper writers and deadlines, I think.
Yes.
But also in the older days, I mean, I remember looking at a game from 1990. I was just looking at a box score, and it said time of game. It's like 2 hours and 30 minutes, because it was on Tiger Vision or something.
Yeah, I used to watch that.
I work for a CBS station. Okay, so I
Yeah.
don't want to bite the hand that feeds me, but
Yes.
certainly I've heard the complaints about the commercials. My goodness,
Yes.
so many commercials in these games. We have a 6 o'clock newscast, right? And when that 2:30 CBS game kicks off, it's like, we ain't going on. And if we do go on, it's going to be maybe a 10-minute, 15-minute newscast because those games go 3.5 hours or longer, So I think that's I don't even call it a problem because money's being made, but the commercials are long and make the games, if we go to an 8:15 game in Tiger Stadium, by the time the post game and everything's done, you're getting home at 2 o'clock in the morning or something.
Oh, yeah. If you live in Mobile and you go to an Auburn night game, 7, 8 o'clock, you're getting home at 4 or 5 o'clock Sunday morning. That makes for a fun day.
you may not be making it to 10 o'clock mass on Sunday.
No, but one thing great about like our church, St. Louis Catholic Church in Memphis, 23 services a week, man. You can't beat that. There's one for everybody, for every.
No complaints. You can't, I miss because of, well, we have LSU does that. They got a 8 a.m., a 10 a.m., a noon, a 6 p.m., an 8 p.m., and a 10 p.m. on Sunday.
Yeah, there's Christian Brothers University, which is a Catholic, college, great school, great business and engineering in Memphis, has a late night mass on Sunday nights. It's 7 or 8 o'clock, same thing. But yeah, the 6 o'clock mass at St. Louis, and there are a ton of LSU fans in Memphis. It's just Memphis has about 100,000 Catholics, and you can find your LSU fans there. By the way, every cooking event we do over there, our Jared Montague is one of our guys, talks to me about the Holy Trinity. His father was played football down at East Reserve, St. John. What's the name of the town? Yeah, set a lot of records down there. I think Ryan Perilou, Montague.
East St. John is Ryan Perilou. East St. John.
Yeah. And I think Ryan Perilou broke his dad's records down there. And Jared's probably listening right now, but they're from Houston, but his dad's from Baton Rouge, and that whole area down there, Denham Springs, the whole area it's just per capita. Mobile, Baton Rouge, and Detroit produce more NFL players than any other city in America. I mean, you look at 23 years at Channel 9. Have you thought about a book?
Yeah, I mean, I have thought about that. I talked to my mom about that, who's an author.
Yeah. Oh, wow.
And she's like, you need to do that. And I'm like, well, I said, probably what I need to do is, you hire somebody, you just talk out loud, they write it all down, and they maybe put it together or something like that. And then if I sold it, I'd give the money to Red, Rock and Blue, my charity organization, and raise the money that way, or do something like that. But yeah, I mean, covered four LSU the national championship game 4 times, won 3 of them, all in New Orleans. 2006 Final Four basketball team, and lots of great stuff. But yeah, you're right. I mean, the high school football played in Louisiana, in particular, south of Alexandria, is second to none. We got 2 huge games tonight: Catholic High and Zachary, Parkview Baptist and U High, to determine district championships. Great stuff.
Yeah, you see my map in the background. I feel like the weatherman. I remember when I was a TV reporter for a couple of years, and I interned at Channel 3 in Memphis, and I did it Channel 3 in Columbus, Georgia. And there was a sign out on the set, and it said, "Avoid the following terms." As you can see, remember that? But look behind me. My friend Barnwood Brenda made this set for me. Lives down in Batesville, Mississippi, and she carves all this by hand. That was carved out of cypress. So I sent the picture to a friend of mine before I put up on my makeshift set here. We're going to build a bigger one here soon. He said he thought it was a chocolate cake. And I've got a lady, Paula Bustler, that makes chocolate cakes and vanilla, whatever you want, that look that good. It's unbelievable. But man, you think about this with what is going on. And you mentioned about, and I said this about writing a book, whatever, but what is happening, Jacques? I watch the stations in Memphis. I watch them in Little Rock. When we're over here, we're 30 minutes away when we're at the Cherry Farm. This is our hunting club. And we all work in Memphis. But the bottom line, I got to say, is the standards have been lowered to me big time. I mean, look, you're a pro. You're not going to do you're not going to put anything up there that's not grammatically perfect. Now, you mentioned that your mother is an author. My mom used to lead the round table group of all the smart kids when I went to PDS in Memphis in 5th and 6th grade. They would read a book once a month. They'd get together and discuss it. I never got invited, but I always heard about it. But, reading, grammar, details, it's everything. There's now this like a man is shot today while walking down the street. What about past tense and all? How are you going to save because do you have interns that work with you? And when you do, if you do you just, empower them and say, listen, do it, but do it right. Don't try to get it first.
Yeah, and my mom was also big on grammar. I mean, I know growing up, it still happens every now and then. I'll say something and not afraid to correct me in front of people. I think yesterday rushing, I said Bobby Knight was an icon.
Yeah.
And an icon, A-N. So
yeah,
that kind of stuff. But I tell interns and younger people that reading feeds your brain. The more you read, the better you speak, I find. So that's important. Look, I love watching TV, but if you watch too much TV and don't read, your communication skills, I feel like, go down to an extent. And so, it's the younger crowd has to be wary of not being just brought into the TikTok. I'm trying to go viral.
Yeah.
I'm trying to come up with something sensational to get a bunch of attention, that kind of stuff, because I think that they are really tempted to do those kinds of things. And especially with Instagram, where people are kind of, putting their bodies out for everybody to see, to get followers and whatnot. That's another thing.
Mm-hmm.
So,
well, I like what you just said about grammar. I mean, my dad's listening right now. I told you my parents are 88 and dad's 95. He will find if there's a word that's not used in the proper context. Remember back, families used to eat together at the dinner table and the TV was not on and you didn't take phone calls when you were eating. But I've always said, because I think about the great Catholic education I got at Christian Brothers High School from the LaSallian brothers. I think of Brother Stephen Schonhoff, Word Wealth, a class we took in 10th grade. You better get it right and use it in the right, if I could find that it was a green book with a red stripe down it. If I could find it, I would pay a premium for it. But I've always believed reading is like lifting weights with your brain. It's that important because it improves and it stretches your mind out. And the best guest that we ever have on the show, Scott Rabelais.
Sure.
Great writer. Oh my God. And I just started bringing him on. I met him up at SEC Media Days. You're the same thing in a video, but you have a great print background. I can imagine the writing. And I'm saying this because everybody we have on here, you can flip and cover LSU. You could talk about Tulane, ULM, whatever. That is the key. And that's what I'm saying. And, you met Oakley McFerrin up there, the kid, hopefully he'll be at Auburn next year. He wants to get into this business. And, I talk and text with him all the time, him and his mom, and he wants to get into this deal. I'm like, follow the lead of the best people. Okay. Watch what they do and don't just throw stuff out there to get what you call clickbait or whatever. But let's talk about the reaction again more. And by the way, you're right. The world could be a nuclear holocaust. And in the middle of that, they would say, tick, 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 coming up 60 minutes. We'll be here in 5 minutes. What did you say the other day? Nothing stops 60 minutes from coming on. But yeah, I'm throwing this stuff out there because I get people every day. I do this show 6 days a week and in the financial services part on that as well. But everybody says, what are we going to do to save sports journalism? Why, John Brady, he would be great on SEC Network talking basketball. That's that guy's on the show. He was on the show last Friday and he's down in Poplarville, Mississippi. And he goes, I'm down in the friend's hunting camp. He goes, come on over here. He goes, you ever heard of Tim Floyd? No, yeah. Hell yeah. He joined us for about 15 minutes. John Brady, and I met him through my friend Frank Duffy, who's involved with Tiger Air. Go Tigers. And it's a lot of fun, but I'm glad to hear you say that. Now I know why the guiding principle is your mom is the grammarian, the author. That all makes sense. All right. So back on this LSU Alabama game, you're going to be taking the full crew up there. When y'all are leaving tomorrow?
Well, full crew is me and Darren, heading over to Tuscaloosa, the videographer who edited the whole and shot most of the Cecil Collins documentary that we've talked about on YouTube, which has got over 80,000 views in less than 3 weeks. So we appreciate all the people that have watched and given us the great feedback. But yeah, it looks like it's going to be a crisp fall evening in Tuscaloosa. I think it's going to be about 62 when they kick it off. No wind, no rain, and dropping into the 50s. So it is textbook football weather at Bryant-Denny Stadium. So obviously ESPN College Game Day is going to be there, and then WAFB will start going live there about 5 o'clock. And then tonight, for those out of state, WAFB.com, WAFB Plus, 6:30 Central, we'll be doing a half-hour LSU Alabama pregame special, which I still need to edit and finish.
Wow.
Today.
You're doing that, a half-hour special on local TV.
Yeah, tonight, 6:30. Tigers and Tide.
Awesome. I mean, honestly, that's what I'm saying about the standard obviously is raised down there. That is great. A half hour on local TV. We need more of that. That's the most encouraging thing that I've heard. But, we have Wes Moore on from Fox Sports Channel 16 in Little Rock. He comes on Mondays. He does a daily show on the radio from 10 to 1, ESPN 103.7 The Buzz. Covers all the high school football all over the state. So you're covering it all. Got to ask you real quick, Tulane. How good is Tulane? And have you had a chance to go down there and talk to Willie Fritz? Because he's not an old guy, and I think he can stay at Tulane the rest of his coaching career. They certainly have the money. Are they willing to spend it to keep him?
Yeah, we our sister station is WVUE in New Orleans, the Fox affiliate, and we get a lot of stuff from them. I mean, I watched Tulane from afar here and there. I watched them last weekend. I watched them. They had a huge lead against somebody a couple weeks ago and almost got close there at the end, but the quarterback's really good. The team continues to win. Certainly last year they finished in the top 10. They won the Cotton Bowl. They beat USC. So, Willie Fritz, when they hired him, he had already had a great track record. I think it was Georgia Southern he was at coming to Tulane. Look, Tulane's it's a difficult place to win. It is truly an academic institution. And I think a lot of people that go to school there, they don't care about football. I mean, and then they graduate and they leave and they ain't coming back to watch football. So I'm rooting for them. They've got they built a stadium on campus. They used to play in the Superdome, and you put 15, 20,000 people in the Superdome, it looks like 15 or 20 people. So they built a 30,000 seat stadium on campus, and they had played a real good game against Ole Miss, which is their only loss of the year so far. Yeah. I got my green on just coincidentally but there you go. Yeah, LSU and Tulane used to play every year, obviously.
I know.
And that stopped, and I don't see it returning because from LSU's perspective, too much to lose and nothing to gain.
That was a fun rivalry. One other thing, Tanner Smith had 8 of his friends up from Lake Charles and DeRidder to specklebelly goose hunt last weekend. And as always, when they come up to visit, we had them over here. It was a lot of fun. They had the big pot going for about 8 or 9 hours, brewing. They made us get this beef tongue gravy with maksha. Oh my God.
Makshu?
Makshu. That's it. Makshu. Yeah, that's it. I keep
my dad, who was Cajun to the core, one day served up some rice and gravy, and I'm eating it, and I'm eating the meat, and I'm like, "Oh, this is pretty good." My dad's like, "Oh, you like that?" I said, "Yeah, it tastes good." I said, "What is it?" He goes, "Tongue, cow tongue." Yeah. And then I was like, "Oh no!" It's like, it's too late. You already said you like it. So
yeah, it was real. Each of those beef tongues were about 20 pounds, and they were the size of like a big giant side of beef. But it was absolutely delicious. I mean, honestly, Tanner and Blake and the guys from Lake Charles, they're members of they're friends. They stayed up. I think the poker game ended at 4:30 Saturday morning. Needless to say, the 5:30 wake up call to go hunting was only answered by a chosen few. It was not a lot of honey, but the poker game was great and the food was fun. You cannot, okay, we're going to have a contest. I know we're out of time, but who has more fun in the kitchen? The Italians or the Cajuns? I mean,
man.
nobody. I've never seen the greatest food in the world is Louisiana food. I got hooked on it as a kid. It's just nothing better. Going to the French market, you name it. But what's your best restaurant nobody's ever heard of in Baton Rouge? And then let people know how they can follow you, and we'll let you go. But thank you, as always, for sharing your time with us. It means a lot.
Well, best restaurant. I tell you what, some of the best places you can go are the local gas stations that do plate lunches. They got one called Go Tiger Mart right here down the street. Red beans and rice. Best fried catfish. Thick fried catfish. I mean, catfish on steroids. Good stuff over there. The Chimes, everyone knows about the Chimes, but that's a great place to go eat. So, but yeah, I mean, a lot of people that come here, they put on weight pretty quickly because of the great food. And now we're heading into winter, right? Now, you ate a bunch of candy for Halloween. You got Thanksgiving and Christmas and sweatpants season coming up here. But, boudin, crackling, those kind of things, man, they stick to your ribs without a doubt. So
remember Costanzo on Seinfeld when he ordered the stretch pants, and Jerry goes, that's it. You've given up. You just
the white flag, right?
Yes.
The elastic band around your waist there. But
there you go. That's right.
Yeah, and boiled crawfish in the spring, can't beat that. So
no, you can't. Now, how do they follow you again? One more time.
WAFB.com, at Jacques Doucet on Twitter and Facebook. So,
all right, look, y'all have a safe trip up there to Tuscaloosa. Good luck in the game, and look forward to talking to you again next week. And again, thanks so much for your time.
Thank you, sir. Anytime. Have a great.
All right, you bet. Oh, you too. All right, let's do this. Bringing Vince Ferrara of the Sports Animal over in Knoxville. Let me say something about a couple of sponsors. ECS House Industries, located in Cherry Valley, Arkansas. Check them out on our website. Chad House and the great people over there. They make the aerators for catfish farming. You see those all over the place. You like catfish? It's because of what they're doing in that 99,000 square foot warehouse in Cherry Valley, Arkansas, located about 14 miles north of Wynn, 32 miles south of Jonesboro. They make the better roller, the pulverizer, the better chopper. You see farming, harvest going on right now. It's for the great folks at ECS House Industries. Check your dealers all around the country. ECS House Industries, Chad House, proud to have them as a sponsor. Also, Red River Ford Toyota, Wynn, Arkansas, located 45 minutes from Memphis, open Monday through Saturday, 9 a.m., 6 p.m. Service department open on Saturdays, 7 a.m. to 12:30 p.m. And they are there always for one purpose, to make the buying experience the best it can possibly be. You can go to the website, redriverfordtoyota.com, and you can get on there very easily, and you can dot the I's, cross the T's. If you get all that done when you show up in person or you get on the phone, you can do it in less than 20 minutes. You can be driving off in a new car, truck, or SUV, and they got over 700 pre-owned vehicles on the lot. A lot of buying power. Red River Auto Group. You recognize John Dobbs Jr. and their family, been in the car and truck business a long time from Memphis. John is a part owner with Mitch Ward and the Ward family, who've been doing business a long time in Central Arkansas. Check them out. They deliver anywhere. And Justin Wynn, the general manager, said, remind people there are no vehicle payments until January of 24 on any vehicles that you buy right now. Justin Wynn, general manager, Rusty Howard, Greg Smith on the sales floor, the whole sales team, they're there to help you. Okay, so we're going to take a quick pause in the action. We'll be right back with Vince Ferrara talking Tennessee Volunteers.
Unbelievably, every 2 minutes in our communities, a child is either bought or sold for sex. I am Ari Dickey, board member for the Nashville Anti-Human Trafficking Coalition. Join me and millions of others in our fight against human trafficking and for its victims by helping to educate the most vulnerable among us, our middle and high school students. Go to nhtcoalition.org, become a partner, and help keep our families safe, because none of God's children are for sale.
All right, Rob Browne here. We're going to bring in Vince Ferrara. And Vince, you see in the background there, my SEC map Barnwood Brenda made. What's the biggest thing over there? Texas. Get ready. When we go to Atlanta for SEC Media Days at the Omni, there's going to be a big, huge thing on the Omni. Texas welcomes, and in small print, the SEC. Is it going to be, you think it's going to be that crazy? But I can already see this one. They talk about the Battle of Como, South Carolina and Missouri, Columbia. How about the real UT? That's going to be the battle. There would be no Texas were it not for Sam Houston, Davy Crockett, Jim Bowie, all the great Tennesseans who migrated out there to Texas. So that's going to be a fun rivalry, UT versus UT. Y'all got UConn coming up to Knoxville this weekend, but the win over Kentucky, that was a good win. That rivalry, the windows, it's closer than it used to be. Let's talk about where Tennessee is right now and how you think they're going to end up the season. And Joe Milton, 18 of 21.
Yeah, there's a lot there, Rob. I guess we'll start with the Kentucky win. It was a little bit of a flashback at times to last year, not necessarily in the Tennessee-Kentucky game and result, because Tennessee housed Kentucky in Knoxville last year, but in the way the game played out. Tennessee had some quick drives with their best tempo all year, the nice mix of run and pass on offense, and it kind of looked like it hit on some deep shots, kind of looked a little bit like last year's offense. But then on the flip side, the pass defense looked like last year's pass defense at times for Tennessee, where there was wide open receivers all over the place, and another opponent quarterback had his best day of the season against Tennessee. So that happened a lot last year, and it kind of reflected back and looked like last year at times. But look, Tennessee got enough stops. They did a great job against Ray Davis in the run. He was only in the 40s in rushing yards. And so Tennessee was committing to stop the run and was willing to give up some of those pass plays. They didn't want to, but they felt like, hey, it all starts with their run game. When they have balance, then that's how they can hurt you. And that was unfortunate from Kentucky's standpoint, that they finally got the passing game going, but then for once, they didn't have the run game going, and that's because of Tennessee's commitment to it. And I bet other teams are going to try to do that to Kentucky as well. But also now it's on tape for Kentucky that Devin Leary can play well. I thought, some of it was Devin Leary coming off of the open week where Kentucky finally was able to have rhythm in their passing game. He stepped up in the pocket, Rob, where he's been one of those quarterbacks under pressure. He's been bailing out of the back, which is always the worst thing you can do. And then he would turn the ball over, trying to rely on his arm strength. And he protected the ball overall in the game and stepped up in the pocket. Tennessee's pass rush couldn't get to him at all. Just 1 sack and 4 tackles for loss for Tennessee's defense. Those are low numbers for them. And they were rushing past Leary, and he would step up in the pocket, and he made plays with his legs, which we haven't seen a ton of this year. So they did some good things, but Tennessee was able to seal the game in the fourth quarter. 4-minute drive, offense doesn't give up the football, runs out the rest of the clock. And they do it with Dylan Sampson, a second-year back, one of the record-setting running backs in the state of Louisiana that got away, and Tennessee ended up signing. He's really dynamic. Tennessee's trio of running backs continues to deliver. Jalen Wright, his 5th 100-yard rushing game this year. He's one of the best in the league. And Tennessee continues to be banged up on the offensive line, but they still have guys step in and play well. And they also had not only the special teams player of the week in the SEC in Charles Campbell, who hit 4 field goals, but they had the SEC offensive lineman of the week in John Campbell, the transfer from Miami. Campbell, a transfer from Indiana. Gabe Judy-Lally, starting corners, a transfer from BYU. Keenan Peely, before he got hurt, was a transfer from BYU. So Dante Thornton had his best game at wide receiver, finally got loose. What they did is they moved him from the slot to the outside, where that's where they said he is most comfortable. They're still trying to figure out life post Drew McCoy. and he had his best game. But you mentioned it, 18 of 21 for Joe Milton, Rob. That's where it begins. He has now back-to-back games had his best game of the season and his career as a starter. So that you're starting to see him, two things with that. You're starting to see him move safeties and know where to go with the ball, but at a quicker pace. And two, because he's finally healthy, Rob, they're running him, and him running early is getting him relaxed and into the game. And so it's slowing things down for him because now he's involved in the run game. He took so much criticism, Rob, and he's running out of bounds. He won't run over a defender trying to pick up a first down, and he's soft, and why don't they run the quarterback sneaks with him? He wasn't healthy. So he's finally getting to feel as much as you can feel 100% 8 games into a season. He's finally able to feel like, hey, he can take that pounding and be effective, and it's made him a better quarterback and passer. So when he's playing that well, by the way, his receivers are starting to help him out a little bit too, Rob. So that is a big thing also. So hit on his deep shots and for the most part. So that was encouraging for Tennessee's pass offense. Now you got to go figure out, hey, how do we get pressure on the quarterback again to protect our back end, which doesn't have Kamal Hadden, who was the highest rated cornerback, according to Pro Football Focus, in the league. And now he's out for the year with a shoulder injury.
Yeah. Well, let's go back to what you said about Ray Davis, running back who transferred from Vanderbilt to Kentucky. He had the 285 yards against Florida. Everybody, this guy's great. What did he do against Georgia? Nothing. What did he do against Tennessee? Nothing. What I'm seeing with Tennessee is a very strong run defense. Auburn ran for 219 yards. They don't have a really high-powered offense. They've been one of the lowest in the country. They looked better against Mississippi State. All things are relative. I like this comment. Again, Kenny in Memphis, Tennessee has a strong run defense. Georgia will be in trouble. But Georgia proved against Florida, you take Brock Bowers out, they're going to find somebody to score. They got to do it. But let's talk about that Tennessee front seven, because you got UConn Saturday. They're not the worst team in America. You got to take care of business there. But then you got Missouri on the road the following week, and that could potentially be a matchup of two top 12 or even top 10 teams, depending on how things shake out for other teams.
Well, I don't see Missouri beating Georgia, so I'm not sure that it'll maybe be that higher ranking. But if you're right, if they win that game, then maybe top 15 to Tennessee moves up a little bit and other teams lose. But these are Missouri, Georgia that's Tennessee's next two opponents. So there's going to be a lot of intrigue in that game for Tennessee. I still kind of worry about Tennessee on the road in Missouri. Man, the way they can throw the ball with what we saw from the pass defense of Tennessee, if they're not better, if they can't get to the quarterback, and they're not holding up on the back end, and they haven't had to send a bunch of blitzes this year. Tim Banks had to dial a few up, and they didn't get home, even with those against Kentucky. So that would be an area of concern with Brady Cook and Luther Burden and others in that passing attack of Missouri that's been outstanding. They're top 20 passing offense in the country. So that's an area of concern for me. But you're right. The run defense has been great for Tennessee, and they were last year, and overall they've been very good this year as well. Gave up some stuff to McClellan and Milroe at Alabama, but overall they've been really solid. The biggest thing that this team has to get back to, and we'll see if we see it against UConn, is getting after the quarterback. They were as good as it gets, and that was a big part of their defense being as stout as they have been, is getting to the quarterback. The last two games, Rob, there has not been a single live ball penalty against Tennessee's opponents. Think about that. No live ball penalties. Alabama, Kentucky. There's holding on every play. There's pass interference on every play. Not a single one called against Tennessee's opponents. Now, I'm not saying that is the be-all, end-all.
Yeah.
We asked Gerald Hodges, who's he does a weekly half hour with us on our show on Sports Talk. How unusual is it that a team doesn't have any live ball penalties against it in a game? And he was a long time on-field official and then replay official, head of SEC replay officials for a while, replays. And he said, very. And that's just one, much less two consecutive games. Tennessee, back-to-back games in the postgame, Rob. You've had Josh Heupel give a silence answer when referencing to officiating. Hey, why weren't you guys able to get to Will Leary? Like 10 seconds of silence and then a next question, meaning, hey, somebody call a hold against our guys. So we'll see if that changes at all. But Tennessee's got to have answers, and they got to figure that part of it out. But got to get to the quarterback somehow, whether it's starting to dial up blitzes, be better at blitzes, have more of your switches and games inside. Got to find a way, or just maybe strain longer. Got to find a way to impact the quarterback, because I'm not sure that back end can hold up if you're not getting to the quarterback.
Well, I mean, you go back to the officiating. I live in Memphis. I mean, I got a lot of Tennessee friends. I'm married to All for life, and all of her brothers, everybody. Cousins, gigantic tailgate. He was supposed to be on with us to join us this morning. His meeting got changed, and he's in Knoxville. I got to throw this one up here from Steve in Atlanta. SEC refs are terrible, but you've seen all the memes and the jokes going on. Look, how in the hell can you not be calling? You could call, if you talk to any offensive lineman, they'll tell you they're doing this. They teach you how to do it. You could call holding on every play. So you know what's happening? We're not seeing many targeting calls this year, but we're seeing an inordinate amount of holding calls, and they're very, very subjective.
Well, yeah, and here the thing that bothers fans where you see the memes is when it's so obvious, like, around the guy's neck, around where they're just being yanked back right in front of the officials. And those are the ones that are harder to comprehend when they're so blatantly obvious, or the pull of the jerseys. It's one thing to get away with it when you're in tight quarters inside. You can get away with stuff, and linemen know what they can get away with. But when you're out in the open and a guy's jersey is extended, or they have a clothesline on them, so those are the ones that bother people. But here's what's you know what the most called penalty is in college football this year, Rob? You want to guess? It's not a hold, by the way. It's something else.
Not holding. It's certainly not targeting.
No.
I'm going to guess it's false starts.
Correct. It is.
I'm seeing a ridiculous amount of those.
Going into this week's college football games, I know that we get games every day now, but 1,300 false start calls throughout the FBS in college football. And guess what? That's down 200 from this time a year ago.
Golly.
And Rob, my partner John Wilkerson and I on the show, we talk about it all the time. You could, if you listen to press conferences of coaches and what they complain about and are annoyed about their team and what they need to get better, you can like cut and paste it and play that and get people to try to guess which coach it is, because they're all saying the same kind of things. We can't be our own worst enemy, can't get behind the chains with self-inflicted wounds. And that's because of false starts. And, when Tennessee has been most efficient with their tempo is when they're not having to start 1st and 15 or second and 13 as opposed to 2nd and 8. When you get behind the chains because of those self-inflicted wounds and those pre-snap penalties, especially, those are hard to come by. It changes everything.
Well, yeah, you're right. And here's Arkansas is the king of the false starts. You start 2 freshman tackles. I mean, there's all kind of things that lead to that. But
crowds, big crowds, home field, yeah.
Yeah, and if you see, you're right, the crowds are so loud, and it's just incredible. And when you're down on the sidelines, it can be eerily quiet. I mean, it's loud as hell, but you're down there. You have to be very, myopic and focused on what's going on. But something that I noticed, you see a 50-yard punt return, any kind of there's almost you're just waiting for the flag to drop for the obligatory block in the back. It's almost like it's a staged play. It's very frustrating. I remember in 1972, 17-16, when Auburn beat Alabama with the 2-block punts, Gary Sanders and Gusty Yearout, the Auburn play-by-play, and Gusty was the color man. After the first, was blocked by Bill Newton out of Fayette, Alabama, and David Langner from Woodlawn High School in Birmingham ran it in for the touchdown. He goes, Butch Lambert dropped his hat, the head official, and said, Butch Lambert dropped his hat, so we're going to have to wait and see, and almost waiting for the wink and the nod from the Bear, like, well, I mean, it was that's the kind of stuff. Look, we've seen balls kick. I've seen it this year. Officials run up there, and it looks like they bump into the ball or they hold. And I'm going somewhere with this, and I want your response. You go back 2 years ago, October 16th of 2021. I was over in Atlanta. Billy Roberts and I went over to the Kentucky-Georgia game that day in Athens. We're watching later that night. Ole Miss won 31-26 in Knoxville. The fainting goats, that's a thing at Silky's Tavern here in Memphis. They have the famous fainting goats. They just fall down. Mm-hmm. The fainting rebels. I mean, I think the rule should be if you fall down, we saw it the other night in the game where the guy looked over and just fell. You're out the rest of that series or the rest of that half. If you're hurt, you got to be taken out. I mean, if you fake being sick when you were a kid with me, then, you may be going and getting a booster shot. I mean, we got to do something about it. It's awful, Vince.
You actually don't see it as much. I mean, it's still present. There's no doubt about it. Everybody does it. Kentucky actually ended their game. They had a player go down in the final minute, and Tennessee was getting ready to bring out their kicker, Charles Campbell, to kick a field goal to go up 2 scores. And because of the penalty, and Kentucky was out of timeouts at a 10-second runoff. So I'm sure the player was down intentionally, maybe he didn't realize the rule, but that it can cost you at times too. And Tennessee, with their tempo, nobody sees it more than Tennessee, and we don't see it as much as we saw it last year. I think, especially early in the year, and 2 years ago, I think it was even worse. The year when Ole Miss came to Knoxville and you had all the fan reaction and all that kind of stuff. That game was crazy. But look, Tennessee does it too. Tennessee has injuries on extra points. Guys go down, and that it happens. There's not a whole lot that's going on those PATs. But guess what? You just zoom down the field in a minute 30 when your defense is back on the field. Now you have a injury timeout, then a commercial break. You get some nice rest for your defense when you put those back to back. So other teams do it also that maybe don't get noticed during the commercial break, but everybody does it to some degree. I'm not a fan of it, but it's until they change the rules on it, it's not going to go away for sure. And I think everybody does it.
Well, to me, it's unethical. And and what they ought to do, they review everything else, these painful reviews, and they have to bring on the expert witness, Dr. Bodden, the autopsy guy. It's horrible. And so what I think they ought to do is go back and review. There was a guy, I think a Kentucky player the other day. They go, all right, this one here gets the Academy Award. I mean, he looks over at the sidelines. Oh, he falls down. Well, you know what? He's out the rest of the game. You start if you don't have accountability, they get away with it. I mean, it's not that it's a bad look. It's unethical. I mean, if you're going to penalize people for targeting, do the same thing for faking it.
Yeah, I just think that penalty is too harsh. And how do you determine intent? How do you determine whether a player did it on his own or if a coach tells him to? I mean, there's so many different levels of it also. I don't know that you can just punish it all together. And that's really their concern when we've talked to officials about that subject. The big concern is, well, what do you do when somebody actually is hurt? And sometimes, Rob, guys are hurt. They're just instructed, hey, rather than wait to get treatment. If you're limping off the field now, go down so we can treat you on the field. So it's not that the player isn't hurt. It's that you can buy the team extra time and rest by getting treatment on the field, as opposed to limping off on one leg and just getting to the sideline so play can continue. So there's a lot of the different variances to it rather than fake injury or not fake injury.
Well, I guess the thing is, if you've got a hurry up tempo, hurry up, no huddle offense, and you're moving real fast, and the other team can't handle it, and they're faking these injuries, that's really frustrating. I mean, Oregon, Chip Kelly in 2010, when they played Auburn, was able to get a playoff every 9.5 seconds. And what Auburn did in the practices leading up to that was get where they could substitute or whatever in under 9.5 seconds. And you think about the effect that had. Oregon with DJ James, the running back, and Darren Thomas out of Houston, the quarterback. DJ James was all-time leading rusher. He still might be at Oregon out of Texarkana. They averaged 315 yards a game rushing. Auburn was statistically one of the top 5 worst defenses in school history. But for the first 20 minutes of the game, they gave up a lot of points. The second half, they shut people down, held them to 75 yards rushing because they were able to interrupt that fast pace, but they weren't, faking injuries. And I'm not attacking you for it. I mean, we have Dr. Andrews on here, who's a great orthopedic surgeon for Auburn and now Alabama. But the fake injuries, it's frustrating because I'm a big Josh Heupel fan because he's from South Dakota. And I love pheasant hunting up there. The people up there are awesome. There's maybe only 750,000 people in the state. But what he's doing at Tennessee, it's almost a guarantee 9 wins a year now with that guy there. It's how do you do against those big 3?
Yeah, and they've already marked against the big 3 with Florida and Alabama last year. Now 0 for 2 there with Georgia to come. I still think there's a gap between Georgia and everybody else in the East, even without Brock Bowers. You saw, by the way, they just have another 5-star, one of the best tight ends from last year's class, and Oscar Dell. They have receivers that they hadn't really needed to use that came up big, like McConkey and Thomas and Lovett. I mean, they just have so many other areas they can go to. But what Josh Heupel has done has been very impressive. We'll see how the season closes out because, look, if they're sub 9-3, there's fans are going to be upset. And if Joe Milton doesn't continue to improve, people are going to point to, if Joe Milton wasn't our quarterback, what would our record be? If we had Nico in there, what would our record be? And they're going to directly point that back to Josh Heupel. So yes, it's been terrific, but the honeymoon won't last very long if there are disappointments down the stretch. If they get housed against Georgia and then lose to Missouri and finish 8-4, that's sub what fans' expectations were for this team. And like I said, especially if you get more inconsistent play from Milton. Now, if he continues to get better each game like he has recently, then yeah, it'll be understandable, and they'll be excited about the future with Nico and what Josh Heupel has been able to do. Plus, his coaching staff develops players also. That's another part of the equation. I'm not saying everybody's going to want Heupel fired or anything if they finish 8-4, but there's been enough like complaining about some of the games, especially with Joe Milton, that it's not like he can do no wrong. And that's with a percentage of the fan base. You know how that works. There's still plenty that really believe in him. And look, the recruiting's got to back it up also. So you finish strong, you get a big win against a quality opponent, that can resonate with you just like it resonated last year when Tennessee fans were carrying the goalposts into the river and recruits were talking about that game being there. Oh, by the way, Georgia at home will be a crazy atmosphere. Man, you do something special there. You think about the rewards it can pay off for you in recruiting. Unbelievable.
As this crowd of some 105,000 comes rising to their feet and the Pride of the Southland band comes out and forms that giant T, and in just a couple of moments, the Tennessee Volunteers, You cannot beat that atmosphere. You cannot make that up. You cannot find it anywhere. I mean, I'm an Auburn fan, and I'm telling you, when my friends always get there early just to watch the sun come up on the Tennessee River, God, and guess what? I found out from Mark Hamm, Audrey's cousin up there at the big tailgate. Smokey, does he drive? He flies with the team? Is what we found out.
Okay,
I never knew that, but have they? We also were told that the new Smokey is having a hard time adjusting to the crowds. This is my friend John Hartwell, the athletic director at ULM, on here with us. And of course, he's been at Georgia State, he's been at Troy, he's been at Ole Miss, Utah State, now back in the South. But they think about that. The new Smokey, they said, was not adapting well to the crowds of 105,000 plus at Neyland. Who is it that owns Smoke? What is Smokey? A blue tick hound?
Correct.
Okay. Yeah. Audrey wants one.
I had, and they're beautiful, great, smart dogs, obviously. And I didn't know that about Smokey not being able to adjust to the crowd. So they brought back the previous longtime Smokey who had retired. He's come out of retirement and doing those home games. But by the way, just real quick on the fans, the UConn game is sold out. It's homecoming on Saturday. It's the 11th consecutive sellout for Tennessee. And look, some of those games are non-conference opponents that aren't big names. So you got to credit Tennessee fans. And then just like pretty much everywhere they go on the road, fans, there's so many of them there, and there's plenty of orange in Lexington. They did a sort of makeshift wall walk on the road. It's incredible. Like everywhere they go, they have enough fans there to do a wall walk. So props to the fans. They're passionate, and some are, just so out of their minds. But it's an incredible fan base what they've been able to do for sure. And I got a chance to visit with Jim Mora, head coach at UConn. People maybe don't realize that the former NFL coach with the Falcons and the Seahawks, he was on our show this morning. So you can check out that interview at 991thesportsanimal.com under Sports Talk and hear about 10-minute breakdown of UConn. And he was very complimentary of Tennessee, obviously, as well.
Yeah, I will definitely want to listen to that because we've all followed him for a long time. But that's what I really love and respect about you is you dig deeper. I mean, you're going and getting 10, 15 minutes with Jim Mora. That will be great stuff to hear. And again, you want your program. To me, I never think about, in my case, who Auburn's playing. I'm going to see Auburn. I'm not going to see the other team. I'm going there for a lot of other reasons, but we're going to come up there for the Georgia game on the 18th, and you got to come tailgate with us. But Vince, as always, I got to tell you, thank you so much, and let you know how much we appreciate our viewers and listeners everywhere. You work your ass off. It shows. You are a pro. And Gary Harris would be on here, but he had to take off today, but he'll be back on next week. But great group of guys that you're with, incredible group, and let them know how they follow you, and then we'll do it again next week, and have a great weekend up there against UConn.
Yeah, appreciate it. At Vince Sports on Twitter, VINCE Sports, or X now, and that's the same handle on all socials, Instagram, Facebook, and that's also my YouTube channel handle as well. And check out our website and our station. I have blogs there, 991thesportsanimal.com. You always have great guests from all around the league and college football. So much respect, Rob, for you and your show, and always a pleasure to be on with you. And look forward to talking to you again soon.
Oh, absolutely. Ditto to you as well. Thanks. Have a great one. John Hartwell, AD at ULM, the Warhawks, Matt Dean over at Rhodes College, the Lynx. And by the way, Matt, when you go to the Memphis Zoo there on Parkway, all this talk about, it's too hot and global warming and icebergs melting. By God, if a polar bear can live on North Parkway at the Memphis Zoo, he can live anywhere, especially in the summer down here. So I'm going to tell you a true story. When I was a ZAP volunteer, Zoo Action Program, we got to wear these bands around our arms, and we when I was in 7th grade, you'd be in 8th grade, you'd be at the exhibits, and you'd tell people about the different animals. Well, one time the security guard, guy looked like Paul Blart, remember the Kevin James character? He said, I was in here one night and rained really hard. And they used to have the bears in those old moats. He goes, I was out on my rounds, and this guy was a big fellow, looked like Junior Samples from Hee Haw. He was waddling around, He said, I looked up, and all of a sudden a polar bear is running toward me. The water had gotten up so high, he floated out. And I said, what did you do? He goes, well, I ran faster than you think I ever could. And I got back inside and called the zoo veterinarian, and they knocked him out, put him to sleep for a little bit, and put him back in his cage. But guys, both of y'all, you heard what Vince just said. I'm so jacked up right now. I don't know what's in this coffee. I mean, but it's 32 degrees this morning. It's frost everywhere. John's got on his, look at that, those school colors. Those are good looking colors. I like that. What are the official colors of ULM?
Yeah, the gold and maroon. I mean, as where was I a couple of weeks ago? I guess in Statesboro, Georgia, was talking to a couple of their beat writers and stuff, and we had on our road white uniforms trimmed in the maroon and gold, and they're like, man, that's like a throwback Washington Redskins. Pardon my political incorrectness.
Oh yeah, the Redskins,
Washington Commanders.
Yeah.
Uniforms, and they said, man, we love those uniforms. Yeah, we are able to do some great color combos with them. So yeah, it was 30 degrees here this morning on the bayou. Woke up, let the dogs out, got my coffee, and there was this eerie steam rising off of the bayou because of how cold it was. I thought I'd left that behind in Utah, but no, beautiful morning.
I'm sure your wife was excited to wake up to frost. Of course, if it was in Logan, Utah, you might be having some serious snow right now. Man, Matt, I got to tell you, Ann Camp Lee, Rumble Boxing Gym, 1835 Union Avenue, one of our sponsors, open every day of the week, 45-minute workouts, incredible workouts, all the equipment you need you can buy there. Check them out on our website. She said, Matt Dean, the people at Rhodes College treated us so well, like royalty, set us up. You know, it was supposed to be raining and, bad weather. Had a fun football game. She met a lot of people. Thinks they got a lot of people that are going to end up joining Rumble Boxing, but couldn't have been happier. And she said, my God, Matt is just unbelievable. And everybody over there, when I went over there for the Ed Murphy Track Classic in August, Rhodes, what a venue, what a school, more than anything, what great people. Remember, it's we the people, not we the government.
Rob, we were glad to help Ann, and she's just one of the sweetest people I've ever met. I'll be honest with you. And we put her right next to, our stadium is probably 3,000-ish, just one side. So right in the entrance there where the players come in, we put her next to there. And we have what we call Cajun Fest on Saturday. It's all of our Louisiana alums come up. And, man, you talk about some good food. We had some jambalaya, some red beans and rice, some king cake. My favorite, personally, the white beans. And our volunteers fed everybody that kind of went to the game, or they bought a ticket. And so Ann picked a really good game in terms of people coming by. And she had her little tent with the Rumble Boxing flag, whatever she's got going on there. So I'm glad it worked out for her, because her gym's not far from our campus.
No, not at all. I like this. This is a classic along the line what John just said. Gary, because of the interweb, as Al Gore calls it, the interwebs, we have listeners and viewers everywhere, and it goes out all over Twitter. Thank you, Nigel, our social media director. Gary in Shreveport, 40 degrees is the magic number. You know what that 40-degree magic number? When it gets 40 degrees or cooler, the Gators will shut down. So if you were going out in the swamp today or going for a walk through the marsh, they're not going to bother you. They're pretty much just going to stay there and be still. But John and Matt, I got to tell y'all, and I told this to Jacques Doucet from Baton Rouge on in the first segment. We had 8 guys from Lake Charles and DeRitter come up hunting, some of Tanner Smith and Blake Kleinpeter's friends. The poker game lasted until 4:30 Saturday morning. 5:30 wake-up call was answered by the chosen few. But they had a hell of a time. So they got the big pot out, and they cooked for about 9 hours. Don't ever rush Cajun cooking. No. It's like Mama Leone in the kitchen, I don't think my mother ever once said, you better get in here before that meal gets cold. I'm like, Mom, we got a warmer. She goes, God, did you hear what I just said? Yeah, you're right. It's going to get cold. But they cooked on that pot for about 9 hours. And neither one of y'all have probably ever had this, but I recommend you get it. Beef tongue and makchu. Oh my God. It was a gravy of the holy trinity of Cajun cooking: celery, onions, and bell peppers. And it's unbelievable. And it was, the gravy took 9 hours to make, and the beef tongue just fell off like a pot roast that's been for 15, 20 hours in a crock pot. Get you some beef tongue. And the beef tongue, the thing is about 20 pounds. There's a lot of tongue. Cows had a big tongue. So I thought I'd tell you that. But let's get to some football, man. Whoever wants to take control right now, I'm bouncing off the wall. I'm so excited because I'm seeing the crowds. I'm seeing the enthusiasm. And, John, you got to love the challenge of coming back from Logan, Utah, taking over in March. You've been there about 7, almost 8 months. Let's talk about progress report, what you're doing different at ULM, because you have a reputation of GSD, getting stuff done.
No, I appreciate that. Hey, Rob, before we get to that, I would be remiss if I didn't take about 45 seconds to give my good friend Matt, as we were raising the flag for Rhodes. I've got a development tip for you, Matt. I didn't realize this till a couple of days ago. So you have got a young lady on your soccer team. She's actually from Memphis, went to Houston High School, and I'm going to butcher her last name, Taylor Theophilides or something like that.
Yeah, I butcher it too. Yeah.
Do you know who she is?
I know, I know most of her athletes, but I'm familiar with her. Yes.
Okay, so here's where you probably want to follow up on this. Her grandfather is a guy named Phil Olson, who happens to be the brother of Merlin Olson. Phil and Merlin both played at Utah State. Both started on the D line for the Los Angeles Rams.
So her grandfather is the connection to Merlin.
Her grandfather is Phil Olson. Merlin, Merlin
I'm taking notes, brother.
Unfortunately, several years ago. Yeah. And by the way, she comes from a pretty good, if that athletic lineage wasn't enough, she's got a first cousin who is a freshman and starts at tight end at Stanford. So that's a pretty good athletic gene pool there. But I just wanted to give you that development tip.
I need that intel. I will transfer that information today.
No, sounds good. But yeah, talking about Warhawks, we go on the road to Hattiesburg this weekend to Southern Miss, and it's so frustrating right now because after starting out 2-0, we're in the midst of a 6-game skid, unfortunately, right now. Hopefully get off of that this weekend in Hattiesburg. And as we've talked about before, very easily could have won 4 of those games. We could very easily be 6-2, just like we're 2-6 right now, but we're not. So, Coach Bowden and company trying to correct some things. We've got a true freshman quarterback who got his first action in Statesboro 2 Saturdays ago, threw for 320 yards the first time he ever stepped foot in live action. So he's the future. And, like I said, got an opportunity this weekend in Hattiesburg. It's going to be kind of a whirlwind trip for me. So I'm going to go to Hattiesburg for the game Saturday. Then I'm going to go to Houston, drive that Saturday night, Sunday morning, go see the Texans and the Tampa Bay Buccaneers play on Sunday. Got a guy, Devin Tompkins, who was a slot receiver for us at Utah State. Very good player who's a slot receiver for the Bucs now. Going to get to see a name some of our listeners know. Chris Kiffin, the younger brother of Lane Kiffin. Chris is the linebackers coach for the Texans. Get to visit with him a little bit. Then Monday, our men's basketball team opens just against a preseason top 15 team in the Houston Cougars there in Houston. And then I'm going to your state, Rob. Tuesday morning, get up and drive from Houston to Fayetteville to see our women's team open at the University of Arkansas Tuesday night, and then back to Monroe Wednesday. So I'm gonna get some windshield time over the next several days, but get to see 3 of our teams compete and see some friends along the way and visit with some donors. So all good stuff.
That's what you call a win-win-win for everybody. I mean, you'll visit with donors, see your teams play, get some wins. There's nothing like getting on the road, guys. I mean, you can think. I mean, we're going to leave today or tomorrow to go to Clarksville, then go to Nashville Saturday for the Auburn-Vandy game. But one thing you do, when you stay in the same place too long, you can get stagnant. When you get out on the road and you see the people, and that's why I love to drive to South Dakota pheasant hunting, you can fly, but there's a couple of things that can go wrong. It can be too cold or too hot. 24 hours before the flight, can't take your dog. Pheasant hunting without dogs is like going to the beach and being told you can't get in the water. You know, I understand Jaws and all that stuff, but anyway, nothing better than getting out on a road trip. That means that Matt is the pledge class representative. You're driving us to the Food King, the Great Lion and Animal House. Let's talk, Matt and John, both of y'all. I like this question from Wilson Pickett in Memphis. Do either of the ADs think the NCAA will pass a rule to punish the fake injuries? Because I know when I was a kid, I said this earlier, if you faked being sick, I can assure you at Christian Brothers High School, Brother Adrian S. Powers would shake your mom down and go, he's not sick. I saw him yesterday. He was fine. You better not be faking it. But the fake injuries it's an embarrassment. I mean, it's like a Hollywood script. Something's got to be done. What can be done? It's like the McLaughlin report. Who wants to take this one on?
I'll start out, and John, you can correct me. I've thought about this, and I think it's really difficult situation for the rules committee. But one thing you can do is you could mandate that if, Rob, I'm playing and I pull up lame, I may have to sit out 3 or 4 plays, because what that does is you may break that play. If I'm a really good player, I get some kind of, slight penalty there not to go back in the game. Because what bothers me is someone will come out and they look like they've been shot out of cannon, and then their play later, they're back in the game. So I think that's where really it's difficult. And I also think it's really, difficult to monitor this, because football's a violent sport. We have a lot of injuries, but the fake flops and then someone limping off and then 2 seconds later they're healthy. I agree with that. But I don't know, John, what are your thoughts? I think
so in my previous league, the Mountain West, and actually this came into play last year. So in the summer of 22 or in the spring of 22, the Mountain West implemented a rule that basically says, okay, if something is reviewed and deemed to be a fake injury, then the coach is subject to a public reprimand on the first one, and on the second one, even a suspension of the head coach. Now, here's where, when that was put into application, because I'll say this, I went through this last year in a situation. I think it was maybe, I don't even remember what game it was, maybe Colorado State or one of our games last year. And one of our players, when I was at Utah State, had this situation occur. And what happens when you really drill down on it and you look at tape, what it's coming down to is, if your head athletic trainer or your team doc says, no, this was legit, it's going to be really hard to argue against them. And quite frankly, there's going to be some gamesmanship in that. So while, on the surface, it absolutely makes sense to put something in there, because this, let's be candid about this. This has come about with the prevalent use of the hurry up offense. Yep. And if you see a team that's got some momentum going, somebody goes down, it saves you a timeout and it disrupts the flow of the offense. Or if you don't have a timeout left, you have that. So I agree, something's got to be done, but it's just not a cut and dry thing. Because again, you're dealing with student athlete welfare, and you're questioning potentially, hey, was he really injured? Now, if you can see the sidelines going, get down, get down, get down, and all of a sudden the guy grabs the back of his hamstring or something, then yeah. But if it's, you can't really tell if one player, if there's some signal from the sideline, which I promise you people have this, if there's some signal, obscure signal, and one of the D linemen next to the guy saying get down, and the guy goes down, it's going to be hard to flush that out.
Rob, one other point. John's 100% correct. And also in the South, when you play in late August and September, early October even, there's a ton of cramping that goes on. So how can you say someone is not out there cramping? I mean, that's really hard to legislate. I agree with John, everything he said.
Well, and I just think that, and I like this one here, Joe in Hartwell, Alabama. The coaches who are telling the players to fake injuries should be fined $25,000 per incident. I guess if you can prove they do it, that'll stop it. You start putting a fine on something, that'll stop it. And that's the only way money gets people's attention. But, and people will say, well, you got to err on the side of caution. Well, they've pushed that so far. It just, they've taken that benefit of the doubt. I don't, and I know you're talking about their well-being, but when you see a player look to the sidelines and then fall down and just do the old dying cockroach, that's a problem. All right, let's look here. Another one. Sam in Tallahassee, FSU will win the CFP. Guys, the rankings came out Tuesday. We had Mr. Bill Hancock, chairman of the College Football Playoff Committee, on sidelines yesterday. Great stuff from him. And he was asked by Doug Dean. We had Doug on with us yesterday. And it was a lot of fun. And we got into and Dudley Dawson was on there as well from hogville.net. He said, what about the Michigan issue? He said, look, we're not a regulatory body or, we just rank the teams based on what they do on the field. What, in y'all's opinion, as ADs, as guys that know the rules, that read the good book every day, the compliance manual, it's about that thick. I can't stretch my fingers out that far. But what about the Michigan deal? I talked to a coach, a couple of them anonymously. I really did. I said, man, we've been getting signals. We do anything we can to get a competitive advantage. But what is it about Harbaugh? Is it the baggy pants, the white socks, the birth control glasses that he wears? What is it that makes him such a target for a lot of people? Is it the Ohio State Minders don't like the fact he's kicked their ass 2 years in a row?
I'll weigh in on that and then be interested in seeing what Matt says. But Harbaugh is one of those guys, and there just always seems to be some smoke around it. Nobody's found the fire yet, but there always seems to be smoke. And I think part of this is the old adage where there's smoke, there's fire, and people are trying to find the fire. Now, the interesting thing is, and I was reading this morning about the teleconference call with the coaches yesterday, it appears that, and rightfully so, they're, when you're the hunted versus the hunter, everybody's after you. And, here they are, depending on which poll you look at, the top couple of teams in the country, and people are after him, and not the least of which are his peers in the Big Ten, his fellow coaches. And so it's going to be, I think they're going to have to do something. The extent to which, now I will say, right, wrong, indifferent, if other people are doing it, and I don't disagree that is potentially happening, but it was kind of an in-your-face move, the fact that these are things that they're submitting for reimbursement through their department. They're a line item in their department, and it's again, back to my previous comment about gamesmanship. This goes a little bit beyond gamesmanship, so it's going to be interesting to see. But I think enough people have a shoulder to this issue and are pressing it. They're going to have to weigh in on it some way, the NCAA. But what's interesting, and you may have talked about this yesterday with Bill Hancock, the CFP committee is saying, hey, this is really out of our hands. We're looking at the football aspect of it, at their where they are on the field of play. This whole deal about the stealing signs and that's an NCAA issue. So that's a clear distinction, for your listeners that don't understand that. There are some things that are within the CFP purview and some things that are within the NCAA purview, and the rules enforcement clearly within the NCAA purview.
Well, Matt, respond to that from an administrator standpoint.
John's spot on. He should be our commissioner when we get this. I know it's a tough spot being L. He needs to run the whole college football playoff. But I'm going to add a couple things to it. John talked about maybe the Big Ten coaches got in the Zoom call, John, yesterday, I heard. And I think the Big Ten, I don't know, you talked earlier about, your conference made a decision on tape or whatever on the punishment thing for faking injuries. The Big Ten can weigh on this too before the NCAA does. And John's right. The CFP chairman, Boo Kerrigan, came out basically and said, hey, look, we are ranking the top X teams. We're not really that's the NCAA's part of legislation. Now, I will tell you this. As a coach, when we watch tape in basketball, if I like a play, now this is different than stealing signs. A lot of times I'll put that play in the next time I play that opponent, and I'll call it by their last name. Like if we're playing the Tigers, I'll run a play called Tiger. And sometimes if that play works, you'll elicit a response from the other bench like, I can't believe you just ran a play. But that's not what we're talking about here. The thing that bothers me the most, John, about this whole thing, if it's true, I saw some clips where this guy, I'm not going to use his name because I don't know exactly what happened, but he dressed up like a Central Michigan staffer. It was on the sidelines, and they got tape of him looking at the other side. I think they were playing Michigan State, their upcoming opponent. And I'm like, now that's just, okay, if that guy's turning an expense report to show up and get on a sideline credential, I don't know how it happened, and do that, man, that's incredibly bad taste. That is like unethical, and that's problematic. But if this is not true, and it's just like Kyle Whittingham had a great segment the other day. He's like, hey, our players get on the field, and we're looking for signals so we can know the play. It's not like we're not doing some of this, but it's how you do it, I think, that is problematic. I don't know, John, if you feel that way or not.
Yeah, I think you're absolutely right.
Well, I'm just looking here. It's funny just to look at some of these comments coming in on the text line. We saw that one there from Randolph and Mortimer Duke, the Duke brothers in Philadelphia, Mississippi. Holy cow, from Trading Places. The NCAA does what Ohio State tells them to do. And again, I say this every time. The Ohio State minders are everywhere. Again, like in Beijing, you talk to any American businessman, businesswoman that goes over there, goes for a morning run, knock out 5 miles in Tiananmen Square. If you're a high-profile American businessman, you're going to have 4 or 5 minders shadowing you on that run. There's always the Ohio State narrative. If it's Chris Carter, Joey Galloway, what's his name? It doesn't matter who they are. They're nice people, but they're always going to have it. What about the Hawkeye mentors? Can't we have, somebody up there representing Hawkeye land or Oklahoma or the SEC? We have them in the SEC network, but I agree. It's almost like the Ohio State, if you look at the last 50 years, Ohio State and Alabama, I think there's one game that separates the two. But when you count national championships in the last 50 years, Ohio State has won 2, and Alabama's won, 15 or 20. It's a bunch. Maybe it's 10. I love college football all over the country, but I do think there's a lot of selective enforcement. Little Jimmy Dickens in Franklin, Tennessee. The NCAA won't do anything to Michigan. Only the SEC can be punished. That is kind of how you feel when you're in the SEC. Notre Dame, they're a Brahmin. They're untouchable. So it'll drive fans crazy. But nonetheless, John and Matt, both of y'all, it'd be cool to have y'all on that playoff committee. Next question. Next year, we're going from 4 to 12 teams. How many more people will be added to that committee? Boo Kerrigan is the athletic director. Don't know him, but he's the AD at NC State. Highly respected man. Do either of y'all know him? I mean, will they expand that committee?
Yeah, I know him. I don't know for sure. I don't think they'll expand the committee. I think they've got a pretty sound process for putting people on the committee, both a mixture of athletic directors, people who have significant experience in college football, a couple of outside folks who have experience. But, the big thing right now is with the expansion to 12, right now it's set up for a 6-and-6 model. The 6 conference champions from the 6 highest ranked conferences, and common sense or history tells you, well, hey, that would be, and again, this was pre the previous shift or the demise of the Pac-12. Common thought would be that would be the Power 5 leagues, the 5 Power 5 leagues, plus the best of the group of 5 leagues for that particular year. And then the next 6 highest ranked teams in the polls. Well, now that the Pac-12 is the Pac-2, the question is, hey, how does that play out? Does it stay 6-and-6? Is the Pac-12, it's doubtful that Oregon State or Washington State, that one of those two is going to be in there, that they're going to have to do some reshuffling of that league to have any chance to do it. But for right now, the CFP committee, and I think this is a good move, has said, hey, we're really going to set that aside right now. We're not going to make the determination whether we're changing from the 6-and-6 model for the 25 CFP until after this year's championship is played. So I think you're going to see a lot of activity post that game. After that game, I think it's played on January the 8th down in Houston. But to sort all of that out, after the new year.
Well, bottom line is we're going to take a quick commercial break. I want to come back, but I want to say this. Red River Ford Toyota open Monday through Saturday, 9 a.m. to 6 p.m., 45 minutes from Memphis. Over 700 cars, trucks, and SUVs on the pre-owned lot. Brand new Ford, Toyota cars, trucks, and SUVs coming in every day. Tons of vehicles in inventory. Justin Wynn, general manager, said no vehicle payments until 2024. Remember that very important fact. So if you're looking to do a trade-in, they will work with you. RedRiverFordToyota.com, and they will deliver vehicles anywhere in the country. They ship them out all the time. You can get on the website, get most of the work done, connect the, dot the I's, cross your T's, and the process takes about 20 minutes when you get there or you get on the phone. It's really easy to work with these people. Justin Wynn, the general manager, that's the Red River Auto Group in Wynn, Arkansas. They're on our website, RedRiverFordToyota.com. And ECS House Industries, located in Cherry Valley, Arkansas, right in the heart of the Mississippi Delta, about 14 miles north of Wynn, 32 miles south of Jonesboro on Highway 1. Again, 99,000 square foot warehouse. I'm going to focus on this. You're seeing all the farmers out right now harvesting all over the country. That equipment, that technology, most of it's coming out of ECS House Industries. Chad House, the great people over there. We're proud to have them as a sponsor. Check with your local dealer to find out where you can get ECS House Industries on board, and also those aerators. If you like catfish, you'll love ECS House Industries. They make those aerators, which make the catfish farms work, and we all love catfish. Aye! We'll be right back after this quick break with more with John Hartwell, AD at ULM, Matt Dean, AD, Associate AD over at Rhodes College in Memphis, talking rules, talking football. When we come back, I got a bunch of questions coming up, so get ready. 1 minute.
Unbelievably, every 2 minutes in our communities, a child is either bought or sold for sex. I am R.A. Dickey, board member for the Nashville Anti-Human Trafficking Coalition. Join me and millions of others in our fight against human trafficking and for its victims by helping to educate the most vulnerable among us, our middle and high school students. Go to nhtcoalition.org, become a partner, and help keep our families safe, because none of God's children are for sale.
Back with Matt Dean and John Hartwell. Matt, you working over there, you don't live there, but you work over there at Rhodes College across the street on North Parkway from the Memphis Zoo. Have you ever heard those gibbons when they start howling, the Simang gibbons, those monkeys in Primate Canyon, the ones that go, no, 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 no. Those are some of the coolest things I've ever seen there. But you've never heard them? That's the great thing about living in mid. Oh, you have heard. Okay. Heard about it in mid.
I've never heard anyone do it so well like you just did. I mean, you sound like you're in the damn cage with them. I mean, but it was no. I mean, it's great. I mean, that's one of the neat parts of our campus is right next to the zoo, across the street. But I
told you about
bear. I promise you that.
Some of my Sigma Nu fraternity brothers that transferred from Rhodes. One of them, Lee Turner from Point Clear, Alabama, transferred back to Auburn, and he said they used to get liquored up and sneak over that fence at night and swim with the sea lions. I mean, but no one knew about that, but they did it. But anyway, how about this from Andre the Giant in Hell's Kitchen? I once drank 117 beers and was still able to wrestle. He was on David Letterman one time, and you know how Letterman would just look at him and go, Andre, I hear you like to have a beer or two. He goes, yeah. He goes, what's the most beer? He was like 7'4", 487 pounds. He said, how much beer, the most you ever drank in one time? He goes, I once drank 117, was still standing. He goes, well, why not 118? But that was amazing. But, the questions that are coming in, and it's interesting to me. I thought Andre was in that big squared circle in the sky. Well, he is, but maybe that's someone who purports to be Andre the Giant. I don't know who it was, but let's get down to it, guys. CFP rankings that are coming out right now. The Michigan issue, again, Bill Hancock said that's not their deal. That's on the NCAA, and that could take years to prove. But that young assistant that is being blamed for all this, I mean, his picture is showing up everywhere. Y'all give me what you think are your top 4 teams, and who are a couple of teams that you think are gaining ground, like LSU. If they win out with 2 losses, go to Atlanta and win the SEC, could they get there? I'll start with you, John Hartwell.
Yeah. I know we've talked a lot about Michigan. It's hard not to have them in there right now. Georgia, defending champion, they certainly are in there, and Ohio State. It's hard to argue with the 4 that are in there right now, where we stand today. But there's a lot of football left to play. Meaningful games in November, and is what it's all about. And I think that's what a lot of people are excited about, expanding from 4 to 12, because when that happens next year, there's not just, maybe 8 or 9 teams that are potentially in contention. You probably got 25 teams that are in contention. Yeah. And I think that is one of the greatest byproducts of expanding to 12. But you look down the list, Washington, Oregon, Texas, Alabama, any of those, could sneak in there. I think anybody with 1 loss right now is a viable candidate. So you go all the way down to, like Penn State, Louisville, but and that's why conference championship games are going to be so important down the stretch, because you look at a team like Florida State and see what they've got left. Yeah, they've got Miami at home. They're at Florida, but you would think they're going to be favored in every game left. They've got Pitt this weekend. I know one of your viewers put across the screen earlier about Florida State to win the national championship. They may well do that, but there's a lot of football left to be played. But I think any of those one-loss teams, could be contenders. And I'll say this too, you talk about LSU, and I know there's a big game Saturday night, LSU and Alabama. LSU's offense has been on a roll.
Yeah.
But, and I've said this before, everybody's written Alabama off. I promise you Saban's going to have a game plan for Bryant-Denny Stadium on Saturday night. That place is going to be rocking. And I would, I know some folks in my home state now here wouldn't necessarily want to hear this, but I would not bet against the Tide in that game.
Yeah, that's going to be a tough one. 3-point spread. Matt, answer that. Talk about that game and also the playoff rankings. And also I see from Shoney, ask Matt what has to happen for Iowa to find some offense. Bonus question about Southern Cal defense. Well, they don't believe in it on the West Coast at Southern Cal. That's just not going to happen. But anyway, tackle those two.
Well, I'll first start off with I think the committee got it right this week because the first ranking really, John mentioned it, there's a lot of football to play. So things are going to work themselves out, okay? The reality is Ohio State does have the best resume because they won at Notre Dame, even though they're very fortunate to win at Notre Dame. And they also beat a really good Penn State team in an ugly-ass defensive battle in Columbus, okay? Now, Michigan still has to go to Penn State, and then Michigan has to host Ohio State. I mean, it's still conceivable that Ohio State can lose at Michigan and Michigan can lose at Penn State. I'm just telling you, Happy Valley is not an easy place to play. So there's a lot of football to be played. I think Florida State, the thing that's tough, if they stub their toe, and get a loss, the ACC is not really valued right now as a conference compared to what it's been in the past in the Clemson glory days. So Florida State's got to remain perfect. Another thought I have, if LSU were to win this weekend and Georgia gets to the SEC title game, I think Georgia, even if they lost the SEC title game, would probably then be at least a 4 seed in the college football playoff because they have some tough games coming up. They still got to play a really good 7-1 Missouri team. They got to play, I believe, Ole Miss, who's 10th in the CFP. So there's so much things to work itself out. I'd be remiss if I didn't talk about my Ducks. What a performance in Salt Lake City. On game day, John, you've probably been in that environment, unbelievable environment. It was funny that week I was talking to my son, and the debate on their staff was, hey, we want the football first because we're going to go down and score and take the crowd out of the game. And they did that. And they punched him in the mouth. They punched back. And I think Washington the last 2 weeks has been living very fortunate. They almost lost at Arizona State at home, and then they barely beat Stanford. And now they got USC. And go back to your question about Southern Cal's defense. Well, I'll give you a great example. Southern Cal lost at home to Utah 34-32. Oregon at Utah, they got 2 field goals against the Ducks. I told you Lanning's defense is getting better every week. He's brought an SEC mentality to that defense, and that's unusual for some of these Pac-12 teams. You can see the same thing a little bit with what UCLA's doing. Chip Kelly's defense has been pretty good this year. So the last thing I'll say about Iowa, it was really weird, John. Interim AD decided, I don't know if it leaked out, it was supposed to get out, but they removed Brian Ferentz. Technically, after the season this week, Kirk had a presser, didn't seem very happy. I don't know what's going on there, but it was interesting, the timing. You're still tied for the Big Ten West. You got 4 games to play. Kirk has never removed the staff member. I know he's not technically gone. It's his son, but basically the AD released a statement that appreciate everything Brian's done, but after the bowl game, we're going to go a different direction. I thought that was really interesting, John.
Yeah, it was, and it'd be interesting to see what happens there. Speaking of coaching changes, potential coaching changes, and I've got to tout this guy a little bit. And yes, he's a friend, and I've known him since he was a linebacker at Kentucky. But you've got South Alabama at Troy tonight on ESPN2, and some Sun Belt action. I'd say this right now, if I'm just looking, and yes, he's a friend, but I'm looking objectively. If you're looking at group of 5 guys who have the opportunity to be that next step up to a Power 5 level, I think it's hard to argue with what John Sumrall has done at Troy and his career, his affiliation, with some really good coaches throughout his career, and what he's done as a coordinator, as a D-line coach to a coordinator to a head coach. And I'd be shocked if he doesn't have some people courting him to coach at the Power 5 level next year.
Yeah. Both of y'all, something we're talking about, I got to ask you this. The CFP, I agree with Cooley and Auburn. Ida and Mary are always going to be my cooks. 715 West Magnolia forever. You got to love Ida and Mary and Cooley, of course. Absolutely. Jerry Kirby, Ohio State #1. This is what's so great about college football. Again, we keep referencing Matt and John, and y'all, your comments are so on point because you've read this and you've written it. You understand the legislative part of it. And this is awesome. Content is king when you're doing a show. So first off, thanks both of y'all. I cannot tell you how much I appreciate what you do every week for us. The argument, I like this one. Floyd the Barber in Sylacauga. Alabama will find a way to make the CFP Final Four. And they're kind of like, what's that song that Don Henley sung? Saw a dead head sticker on a Cadillac. You can't look back. They're coming. Yeah, they're bound and determined to take out LSU Saturday. But now next year, I'm going to throw this to you, John. You lived out there in Utah for nearly 8 years. Is the Mountain West and all those people, they love college football too out there. They got the rodeo. I mean, it's a different world out there, but they love college football. I see, Utah State, the Aggies. When we go to a 12-team playoff next year, this time next year, every team in the top 25 is going to be saying, we got a chance. I think it's great for college football. Again, give credit where it's due. Tony Barnhart quoted, not even the adults can screw it up. College football. It is.
And, you look at the top 25 right now, I think the top 2 group of 5 teams ranked right now are Tulane, who obviously had an unbelievable season last year. They've played a really strong non-conference schedule. You've got Air Force, who's still undefeated. Maybe not as strong of a non-conference schedule, but they played some really good teams. So, I definitely think, fast forward to next year. And like I said, when you've got 12 slots open, all of a sudden that's got, 25 to 30 teams that are in the mix at this time of the year. So a lot to be said there. I'm probably partial a little to our Sun Belt right now, but I would say, with some of the fluctuation going on in the Mountain West, and not to take anything away from the year that Air Force or Wyoming are having, but I would venture to say, again, in our league, James Madison, Troy, and it goes right on down the list. The parity in the Sun Belt Conference and the competitiveness is really, really strong. And, I look for the Sun Belt to be one of those regular participants from a group of 5 level in future CFP games.
Yeah, and you talk about the Sun Belt, Harrisonburg, Virginia, James Madison, Signetti, the coach up there. I asked this to Bill Hancock yesterday. This is their second year in Division I of the 133. So I think they're ranked in the CFP rankings, but they can't participate if everything happened. But this right there is a harbinger, word wealth. I love that word, harbinger of things to come. This is what I love. You think those folks up in Harrisonburg aren't excited, and they won't be excited when ULM starts winning a bunch of football games? Coastal Carolina, it is true all politics are local because your interests are what matter to you. Well, it's the same thing in football. The people in the Sun Belt in a lot of years, Matt, you can argue is the fourth or fifth best football conference in America. This year, top to bottom, who's better, ACC or Sun Belt, Matt?
Well, I mean, I don't have the data in front of me, but I agree with what you're saying. And I also think it's going to be incredible, John, how next year, and then we talk about 12, but how are we going to determine that group of 5 representative? Has that been laid out, or is that going to all be the committee's decision? Because you're right. You can say the Sun Belt right now, outside of maybe the top 2 in the AAC. And I think it's going to be incredible next year to see that process laid out, because honestly, I think Air Force right now, I watched a little bit of that game against Colorado State, plus it was snow, and I kind of enjoyed it. Well, Air Force, man, they're pretty good. Tulane, one loss is only to Ole Miss, who's number 10 in the country. They're pretty good. There's some really good football being played in the Sun Belt, and I'm looking forward to the future with the expansion.
I want to throw this one to you. I'm so happy for my friend, and John knows him, Tim Horton. I love that guy. He's just as good as it gets. And 8-0. Yeah. Liberty's 8-0. I mean, John, Hugh Freeze. I mean, damn. Yeah. I mean, Liberty's 8-0. So Auburn people, you're panicking, worrying about it. Just like I said about Brent Venables. Last year, remember, they lost, 6 games? They were 5-7 at Oklahoma. Remember those last 5 games, Oklahoma lost 4 games by 3 points. 4 games. He didn't get a lobotomy on his way to Norman when he left Clemson. I just you got James Madison at 8-0, you got Liberty at 8-0, and you got Air Force at 8-0. I remember 1987, I went out there to the Liberty Bowl in Memphis, Air Force and Ohio State. Air Force curb stomped Ohio State in that bowl. Whoa, Ohio State didn't want to be there. Well, that's their fault.
That's right.
This is what's cool about college football. You think people out in Colorado Springs and anyone in the Air Force around the world isn't doing backflips right now, going, what might happen? I mean, John, this is what's so cool about having you on here, and Matt, is y'all know that a rising tide floats all boats.
Yeah, it does. And I can tell you, there is not a single team out there. I don't care if it's, the top 4, 6, 8 that we talked about. If somebody said tomorrow, hey, you have to play Air Force next week or 10 days from now, they want no part of that because of the offensive scheme. Those kids, you want them fighting for our country because they're not going to beat themselves. They're not going to make mistakes. It's a fine-tuned machine, and they're, and I know Troy Calhoun, their coach, who's been there a long time, and some people love him, some people hate him, but he is as tough as nails, and his kids are as tough as nails. Yeah, that's what's so beautiful about college football. It's, I won't say anybody can beat anybody on a given night, but there's a lot of teams out there that nobody's ever heard of or really paid attention to that can give, the top tier teams all they want.
Yeah, and that's the part about it that both of y'all have traveled around the country. I mean, again, Matt and Tyler's on the staff at Oregon. Oregon, I saw something where the ranking of the top 12 teams, Oregon's resume is 12th, in terms of who they've played. Well, you can't help who you play, but you can control how you play, who you play. Matchups are important, but my friend Mark Green always said the matchups on game day are most important. What I'm seeing among fans, every time we finish this show, it's 2 hours. You're gasping for air to try to get it all in. The interest and the passion of the fans. No group of people, they can try all they want. NIL in the portal. The message is there's more to life than just, you looking in the mirror and what can I do for me? I heard Kirby Smart saying his priorities on getting ready for games. Me was the last thing, and what does team stand for? Together, everyone achieves more. I think the fans are sending the message, and I think we're always going to have guys transfer about out of time. But you know what? The grass isn't always greener on the other side of the street, and you still got to cut it and fertilize it and water it. There's the problems that you had at school A typically follow you to school B and school C, don't they, guys?
Yeah, when you that's why it's so important, and so many schools are spending so much time now utilizing staff that may in the past have been evaluating high school kids or JUCO kids. They're evaluating these transfers because, while there are legitimate reasons for transfers, you want to make sure you do all the background work you can to make sure that somebody's just not, running from trouble, and you can use all the cliches you want to. A leopard doesn't change its spots, whatever. But, you have got to do your homework to see to drill down on the true reasons why kids are wanting to leave the program they're in.
Yeah. Zebras don't change their stripes, just their watering holes. That's so true. Hey, look, most often we see the face of Christ in the least among us. Guys, we all know this. We live in the greatest country in the history of the world. We the people, not we the government. Don't ever forget that. If you could, Matt, let people know how they can follow you, and then John, do the same. And again, to all of our sponsors and everybody, I want to say this. Get out today. Hewlett & Dunn Boot and Clothing Company on the historic square, Collierville, Tennessee. They've got the largest Filson order they've ever brought in, more duck heads than you've ever seen, 7,000 plus pairs of kids and adults, men's and women's boots. They've got Vask, Hire, got some great new Danner boots out there a couple of weeks ago. Kimes Ranch, STS, golly, the luggage. It's unbelievable. Hewlett & Dunn Boot and Clothing Company on the square, open Monday through Saturday, 10 a.m. to 6 p.m. But Matt, tag us out, and then you, John.
www.rhodeslinks.com. Follow Rhodes Athletics year-round. We have our Links Live network for all of our games for streaming, which is free. And personally at Dino Hoops 44. Go Links.
Love it, man. John?
Yeah, you can follow everything happening in Warhawk Athletics, www.ulmwarhawks.com. John_Hartwell on Twitter. Like I said, I'm going to be doing the trifecta, hat trick, whatever you want to call it, this weekend. I got football in Hattiesburg on Saturday, men's basketball at the University of Houston Monday, and the Lady Warhawks open up in Fayetteville against Arkansas on Tuesday night. So we'll be on the road some, but excited, a very exciting time of the year when you've got football still going on. You got men's and women's basketball. You got, volleyball coming down the stretch, soccer tournaments, a lot going on, but enjoy getting out and supporting our student athletes.
Hey, look, no road trip would be complete without a stop at Emily Dickinson College to check on Fawn Leibowitz. Road trip. All right, folks, we're out of here. Thank y'all, guys. We'll see you in the morning.